Sign the damn papers, Elena. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Marcus Sinclair's voice was cold as he stood at the foot of her hospital bed. His mistress, Vanessa, waited in the doorway. Elena's legs lay motionless under white sheets. 3 weeks paralyzed. 3 weeks since the accident. And he was already walking away. Marcus thought he was divorcing a broken waitress with nothing to her name. A woman too weak to fight back. Too damaged to matter. But Marcus never asked why Elena always had just enough money to save and assist him. He never questioned the mysterious calls she took in private. He never wondered why she signed the divorce papers with a different last name. Marcus Sinclair was about to discover that wheelchairs don't make you powerless. They just give you time to plan. And Elena Harrington had been planning for years. Now, let me take you back to where his world started to crumble. But before we dive in fully, drop a comment and tell us where you're watching from. We love seeing how far these stories reach. And listen, it's only people who supports Marcus was right to abandon his paralyzed wife will not like and subscribe. But if you believe in justice, if you're Team Elena, if stories about people who rise from the ashes and take back their power speak to your soul, then you need to subscribe right now. Hit that button, because what happens next will leave you speechless. Now let's get into it. At the hospital room, Elena Sinclair lay motionless in the bed, her legs unresponsive under the thin white sheets. The doctor had left 10 minutes ago, but his words were still hanging in the air like a death sentence. Permanent spinal damage. No guarantee of recovery. Wheelchair maybe for the rest of her life. Her husband stood by the window, not beside her bed where he should have been. Marcus Sinclair stared at his phone, jaw tight, scrolling through messages he didn't bother to hide anymore. "Marcus," Elena said softly. Her voice cracked. "The doctor said there's experimental therapy in Switzerland. It's expensive, but—" "Elena, stop." He didn't turn around. "We need to talk." She knew that tone. It was the same one he'd used when he'd canceled their anniversary dinner last year. When he'd stopped coming home before midnight. When he'd started smelling like someone else's perfume. "What do you mean?" Her fingers gripped the bed rail. Marcus finally turned. His face was blank, and he said this like he had rehearsed it. "I can't do this anymore." "Do what?" Elena's heart hit so hard against her ribs. "This." He gestured at her. At the wheelchair folded in the corner, at the monitors beeping steadily. "Us. I didn't sign up to be a caretaker." The room seemed to move before her eyes in 360 degrees. "Marcus, the accident was 3 weeks ago. You're doing this now? When else would I do it?" He pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket and dropped it on the foot of her bed. "Divorce papers. I already signed. My lawyer says you have 30 days. Elena stared at the envelope. "We've been married 4 years. 4 years, Marcus. You're leaving because I can't walk?" "Don't make this about that," he said, but his eyes flickered to her legs. "We grew apart. You know that." "Grew apart?" Her voice rose. "I supported you through business school. I worked double shifts when your startup failed. I believed in you when no one else did. And I appreciated it," Marcus said flatly. "But you're not who I need anymore. You're broken, Elena. I need someone whole." The door opened before she could respond. A woman walked in, looking so tall, wearing a black dress that spelt luxury. She carried 2 coffees, one of which she handed to Marcus. "Ready?" the woman asked, not even glancing at Elena. Marcus took the coffee. "Yeah, let's go." "Who is that?" Elena whispered. "Vanessa," Marcus said casually, like introducing a colleague. "She's helping me through this." Vanessa smiled then. It was the kind of smile that cut. "I'm sure you understand, Elena. Marcus needs someone who can keep up with him, someone who can actually stand beside him." Elena's vision blurred, not from tears, from rage so pure it made her hands shake. "Sign the papers," Marcus said, already heading for the door. "Don't drag this out. You'll only embarrass yourself." They left. The door clicked shut. Elena stared at the divorce papers, at the signature line that read, Elena Sinclair. Her married name. The name she'd taken because she'd loved him. Because she'd thought he loved her. She reached for the pen on the bedside table. Her hand kept on shaking as she signed, but not the name Marcus expected. Elena Harrington. Her real name. The name she'd hidden for 4 years. The name connected to a family empire worth $60 billion. The name of the woman who was about to destroy him. She pressed the call button, but not for a nurse. A different number. One she hadn't used in years. The phone rang twice. Miss Harrington. The voice on the other end was calm, British, efficient. I wondered when you'd call. Julian, Elena said, her voice steady now. I need you in Chicago. Tonight. Of course. What are the specifications? Elena looked at the divorce papers, at Marcus's arrogant signature. Find me everything on Marcus Sinclair, bank accounts, business dealings, the woman, everything. And then, Elena smiled, and it wasn't kind. Then we remind him what happens when you underestimate someone. Understood, Miss Harrington. I'll have a preliminary report by morning. She hung up and leaned back against the pillows. Her legs still didn't move, but that didn't matter. She had other tools now. Marcus thought he'd married a nobody. A waitress from Iowa with no family, no money, no prospects. He'd never asked why she'd been so secretive about her past. He'd never wondered why she always had just enough money to cover his bills. He'd assumed she was lucky, frugal, simple. He had no idea she'd been testing him. That every month of their marriage had been a question. Would you love me without the money? Would you stay if things got hard? He'd answered, loud and clear. Now it was her turn to let Marcus know that her world doesn't revolve around him. Julian Cross arrived at midnight. Elena had been moved to a private rehabilitation facility by then, a place Julian had arranged within hours. Not a hospital room with beeping machines and fluorescent lights. A penthouse suite with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Michigan, a team of private nurses, and a physical therapist who'd worked with Olympic athletes. Julian stood in the doorway, impeccable in a black suit despite the late hour. He was 47, silver threaded through his dark hair, and he'd been the Harrington family's head of security for 20 years. Miss Harrington, he inclined his head. You look well, considering. Don't patronize me, Julian. Elena was sitting up now, wrapped in a silk robe someone had brought. Her hair was still damp from the shower the nurses had helped her with. I wouldn't dream of it. He crossed the room and set a tablet on the table beside her. Preliminary report on Marcus Sinclair, as requested. Elena tapped the screen. Photos loaded. Marcus at a restaurant with Vanessa. Marcus at a hotel. Marcus at business meetings Elena had never heard about. He's been seeing her for 8 months, Julian said. Vanessa Carrington, 26, works in marketing for a pharmaceutical company her father owns. Marcus met her at a conference in Miami. 8 months, Elena repeated. Before the accident. Before she'd needed him most. What else? Julian pulled up another file. His business, Sinclair Solutions, mid-level consulting firm. He's been running it into the ground for the past year. Cash flow problems, client complaints. He's got $83,000 in credit card debt and a line of credit he's maxed out. How has he been paying it? Minimums. Barely. He's been using your joint account to cover expenses while funneling money to impress Vanessa. Expensive dinners, weekend trips. He bought her a bracelet last month that cost $12,000. Elena's jaw tightened. My money? Technically, yes. You've been the primary earner for 3 years. His business has been losing clients steadily. And the divorce. Julian's expression darkened. He filed the papers 2 days after your accident. Vanessa was with him when he met with the lawyer. Elena closed her eyes. 2 days. He'd waited 2 days after she'd been told she might never walk again. What do you need from me, Miss Harrington? Julian asked quietly. Elena opened her eyes. I want to know everything about his business. Client lists, contracts, financials. I want to know who's keeping him afloat. And then Then we take it all away. Julian smiled faintly. I'll have the full report by tomorrow evening. One more thing, Elena said. I want my father to know. I'm ready. Julian's smile widened. He's been waiting 4 years to hear that. The next morning, Elena's phone buzzed with a single text from an unknown number. Dinner, Saturday. The Drake. Private room. Dad. She stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, I'll be there. For 4 years, she'd hidden from her father, from his world, from the weight of being Victor Harrington's only daughter. She'd wanted to be normal, to find someone who loved her for her, not for the billions attached to her last name. She'd found Marcus instead, and he'd loved neither her nor her money. He'd loved what he thought she could be, convenient, supportive, disposable. Now he was going to learn exactly what he'd thrown away. Elena spent the next 3 days in physical therapy. Her doctor, a stern woman named Dr. Patel, pushed her harder than anyone had in weeks. You have partial sensation returning in your left leg, Dr. Patel said, watching Elena grip the parallel bars. The spinal cord wasn't severed, just damaged. With aggressive therapy, you might regain limited mobility. Limited? Elena grunted, trying to shift her weight. Walking with assistance. Possibly without, if you work hard enough. Dr. Patel's voice softened. But it's going to hurt, Elena. Every day. For months. Good, Elena said through gritted teeth. I need to remember why I'm doing this. By Wednesday, Julian returned with a full dossier. They sat in her suite, the tablet between them, as he walked her through Marcus's entire professional life. Sinclair Solutions is hemorrhaging money, Julian said. He's down to 4 clients, and 3 of them are considering leaving. His biggest account is Apex Pharmaceuticals. Vanessa's father's company. Correct. Marcus has been doing marketing consulting for them for the past year. It's the only thing keeping his business alive. Elena leaned forward. What happens if Apex pulls the contract? Sinclair Solutions collapses within 60 days. Elena smiled. Find out who makes those decisions at Apex. Julian tapped the screen. A man's face appeared. Gerald Carrington, CEO, Vanessa's father. He approved the contract personally as a favor after Marcus started dating his daughter. So if Vanessa stops dating Marcus, Gerald pulls the contract, Julian finished. But that's not your best leverage. What is? Julian pulled up another file. Marcus has been overbilling Apex by 30% for 6 months. He's been inflating hours, charging for services never rendered, and pocketing the difference. It's small-scale fraud, but it's enough to bury him if someone reports it. Elena's pulse quickened. You have proof? Invoices, timesheets, emails, everything. Who else knows? Just us. And Marcus's accountant, who's been looking the other way because Marcus pays him under the table. Elena sat back. The pieces were falling into place. I need to meet my father first, then we move. Saturday night, Elena arrived at the Drake. In a wheelchair, but not the clunky hospital-issue one. This was sleek, black, custom-designed. Julian pushed her through the lobby, past guests who stared, into a private elevator that led to the penthouse restaurant. Victor Harrington stood when she entered the private dining room. He was 61, tall and commanding, with silver hair and the kind of presence that made people stand straighter without realizing it. Elena. His voice cracked just slightly. Hi, Dad. He crossed the room and knelt beside her wheelchair, taking her hands. I'm so sorry. I wanted to come to the hospital, but Julian said you needed time. I did, Elena said, but I'm ready now. Victor studied her face, his eyes searching. Ready for what? To come home. He exhaled, relief flooding his features. You were always home, sweetheart. You just needed to figure that out yourself. He stood and gestured to the table. Sit, eat, tell me everything. Over dinner, Elena laid it out. The accident. Marcus's betrayal. Vanessa's cruelty. The divorce papers. Victor listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker with every sentence. "He left you in a hospital bed," Victor said finally, his voice dangerously quiet. "While you were paralyzed." "Yes." "And took up with another woman who mocked your condition." "Yes." Victor set down his fork. "What do you want me to do?" Elena met his eyes. "Nothing." He blinked. "Nothing?" "This is mine, Dad. I need to handle it myself. But I need access to the family resources, lawyers, investigators, corporate leverage." Victor's expression shifted from anger to something like pride. "You want to destroy him yourself." "I want him to know it was me." He smiled then, sharp and approving. "What do you need?" "Julian's already started. But I need one more thing." "Name it." "Sinclair Solutions. I want to know if it's for sale." Victor pulled out his phone and typed a message. 30 seconds later, he looked up. "It's not officially on the market, but Marcus has been quietly looking for investors. He's desperate for capital." "How desperate?" "Desperate enough to sell majority control if the price is right." Elena smiled. "Then let's make him an offer he can't refuse." The next 2 weeks moved fast. Elena threw herself into physical therapy with a ferocity that surprised even Dr. Patel. She progressed from gripping parallel bars to taking assisted steps. Her legs screamed with every movement, but she gritted her teeth and pushed harder. Meanwhile, Julian worked behind the scenes. He created a shell company, Meridian Acquisitions, backed by Harrington Industries' vast network. The company reached out to Marcus through his business broker with an offer: $2 million for 65% ownership of Sinclair Solutions. Marcus took the meeting within 24 hours. Elena watched from a remote feed as Marcus sat in a conference room with Julian's proxy, a lawyer named David Chen. Marcus wore his best suit, the one Elena had bought him for their wedding anniversary. He looked confident, eager. $2 million, Marcus said, leaning back. "That's generous for a company my size." "Meridian Acquisitions sees potential," David said smoothly. "But we require full operational control. You'd remain as a consultant, but all major decisions go through us." Marcus hesitated. "I keep my title. Of course, founder and chief consultant, but the board makes the calls." "Who's on the board?" "Our investors prefer to remain anonymous initially. Standard practice for private equity." Marcus considered this, his ego clearly wrestling with his desperation. Ego lost. "When do I see the money?" "The moment you sign." Marcus signed. 3 days later, Elena received the executed contracts. She now owned 65% of her ex-husband's company. He had no idea, but she wasn't done. That same week, Julian arranged a meeting with Gerald Carrington under the guise of discussing Apex Pharmaceuticals' marketing strategy. The meeting took place in a neutral office, with Julian presenting himself as a consultant for Meridian Acquisitions. Gerald was a broad man in his 50s, sharp-eyed and skeptical. "You're pitching me marketing services?" "Not exactly," Julian said. He slid a folder across the table. "We're pitching you fraud awareness." Gerald opened the folder. His face went pale as he scanned the documents. Invoices, timesheets. Marcus's overbilling laid out in excruciating detail. "This is from Sinclair Solutions?" Gerald asked slowly. "Yes. Marcus Sinclair has been defrauding Apex for 6 months. 30% markup on non-existent services. We estimate he's stolen approximately $140,000 from your company." Gerald's jaw tightened. "How did you get this?" "We acquired Sinclair Solutions last week. During our audit, we found the discrepancies. We're legally obligated to report it, but we wanted to give you the courtesy of seeing it first." "Why?" Julian smiled faintly. "Because Meridian Acquisitions values ethical partnerships, and because we believe Apex deserves better." Gerald stared at the documents for a long moment. Then he picked up his phone. "Get me legal and security. I want Marcus Sinclair's contract terminated immediately, and I want my daughter kept away from that man." Julian stood. "We'll cooperate fully with any investigation you pursue." As he left, Julian sent a single text to Elena. "Done." Elena read the message from her suite, where she was standing, shakily, gripping a walker. Her legs trembled, but they held. Dr. Patel watched from across the room. "You're progressing faster than I expected." "I have a deadline," Elena said. "For what?" Elena smiled. "A party." The Harrington Foundation Gala was scheduled for 3 weeks later. It was an annual event, a glittering showcase of Chicago's elite, held at the Museum of Contemporary Art. This year's theme, resilience and recovery. Elena had Julian send Marcus an invitation. Not as a guest, as part of the catering staff. Marcus didn't know it yet, but his world was collapsing. Apex had terminated his contract. Vanessa had stopped returning his calls after her father forbade her from seeing him. And Sinclair Solutions, now under Meridian's control, had let him go as a consultant due to performance concerns. He was broke, desperate, and scrambling to find work. When a staffing agency offered him a catering gig for $500, he took it without asking questions. The night of the gala, Elena arrived in a limousine. She stepped out onto the red carpet, and the cameras flashed. She was walking, slowly with an elegant cane, but walking. She wore a midnight blue gown that shimmered under the lights, her hair swept up, diamonds at her throat. The crowd gasped. Whispers rippled through the gathered press and guests. "That's Elena Harrington, Victor Harrington's daughter. I thought she was paralyzed." "She's walking." Elena smiled for the cameras, poised and radiant, and made her way inside. Julian walked beside her, a steady presence, as they entered the grand hall. The room was breathtaking, crystal chandeliers, ice sculptures, tables draped in white silk. Chicago's wealthiest and most powerful mingled, champagne flutes in hand, diamonds glittering under the lights. And in the corner, near the service entrance, Marcus stood in a white server's jacket, holding a tray of hors d'oeuvres. He didn't see her at first. He was too busy staring at the opulence, at the world he'd once thought he'd belonged to, at the life he'd convinced himself he deserved. Then Elena walked past him. He froze. The tray in his hands tilted, and a champagne flute slid off, shattering on the marble floor. People turned, stared. Elena stopped, turned slowly, looked at him. For a moment, neither of them spoke. "You?" Marcus whispered, his face drained of color. You're walking." "Yes," Elena said calmly, "but you're here, at this gala." How did I what, Marcus?" Her voice was soft, but it carried. People nearby were listening now, sensing drama. "How did I afford this dress? How did I get an invitation? How am I walking?" He stammered. I don't understand." "No," Elena said. "You never did." Julian appeared at her side. "Miss Harrington, your father is waiting." Marcus's eyes widened. "Miss Harrington?" Elena smiled. It was the kind of smile that destroyed empires. "Did I never mention?" "Elena Harrington, daughter of Victor Harrington, sole heir to Harrington Industries." The blood drained from Marcus's face. That's not possible. You were a waitress. You had nothing." "I had everything, Marcus. I just wanted to see if you'd love me without it." She stepped closer, her cane clicking on the marble. "You didn't." "Elena, wait." His voice cracked. "If I had known." "That's the point. You didn't know, and the moment I needed you most, you left." She tilted her head. "Tell me, how's Vanessa?" Marcus flinched. We're not together anymore." "I heard. Something about her father finding out you'd been stealing from his company." His face went white. "That was a misunderstanding." "Was it?" Elena's voice turned to ice. "Overbilling, fraud, $140,000. That's not a misunderstanding, Marcus. That's a felony." People were staring now. Phones were out, cameras recording. Marcus looked around wildly. You did this. You set me up." "No," Elena said softly. "You did this to yourself. I just made sure people found out." Elena, please. He reached for her, but Julian stepped between them. Don't, Julian said quietly. Marcus's hand dropped. I'm sorry. I made a mistake. I was scared. The accident, your injuries. I didn't know how to handle it. So you left, Elena said. You took my money, cheated on me, and abandoned me in a hospital bed. I know I was wrong. But if you give me another chance. Another chance. Elena laughed, but there was no warmth in it. Marcus, you don't get another chance. You don't get anything. Sinclair Solutions. I own it. I bought it 3 weeks ago. Your business is mine now. He staggered back. What? Meridian Acquisitions. That's me. I fired you, Marcus. I took your company, exposed your fraud, and destroyed your relationship with Vanessa. And now I'm going to watch you live with the consequences. Marcus sank to his knees, champagne soaking into his pants from the shattered glass. Please, Elena, please, I'll do anything. Elena looked down at him, her expression unreadable. Then she turned to Julian. Have security escort him out. He's upsetting the guests. Of course, Miss Harrington. As Julian gestured to the security team, Elena walked away, her cane clicking steadily. She didn't look back. Behind her, Marcus called out, his voice breaking. Elena, Elena, please. She kept walking. The gala continued. Elena rejoined her father at the head table, where he stood and pulled out her chair. Well done, Victor said quietly. Elena sat, her hand steady now. It's not over yet. What else is there? The legal consequences. I've already submitted the fraud evidence to the state attorney's office. They're opening an investigation. Victor raised his glass. To justice. Elena clinked her glass against his. To knowing your worth. The weeks that followed were brutal for Marcus. The state attorney filed charges. His assets were frozen. He couldn't afford a good lawyer, and the public defender assigned to him was overworked and uninterested. The trial was swift. The evidence, damning. Marcus was sentenced to 5 years in federal prison for fraud and embezzlement. Elena didn't attend the sentencing. She was too busy rebuilding her life. She threw herself into the Harrington Foundation, focusing on spinal injury research and recovery programs. She became the face of the foundation, speaking at events, meeting with patients, advocating for better care. Her recovery continued. 6 months after the accident, she was walking without assistance. A year later, she ran a 5K for charity, and she met someone new. Dr. Nathan Cross, a neurosurgeon who'd consulted on her case. He was kind, patient, brilliant. He loved her for exactly who she was. They got engaged 2 years after her divorce. But the story didn't end there. 5 years after Marcus's sentencing, Elena was hosting another gala. This one was bigger, more prestigious. A celebration of the foundation's 10th anniversary. She stood on the stage in a white gown, her hair down, no cane needed, and addressed the crowd. 10 years ago, I couldn't walk, she said into the microphone. I was told I might never recover, but I had people who believed in me, who fought for me, who reminded me that strength isn't about what you can do with your body. It's about what you do with your will. The crowd applauded. And tonight, we celebrate everyone who's found that strength. Every patient who refused to give up. Every family who stood by them. Every researcher who pushed boundaries. This is for you. More applause. Elena smiled, soaking it in. Then, in the back of the room, near the service entrance, a figure caught her eye. Marcus. He was older now, thinner, worn. He wore a server's uniform again. Hired by the same staffing agency, still trying to scrape by after his release from prison. Their eyes met across the room. Elena's expression didn't change. She looked at him for a long moment, then looked away, as if he were a stranger, as if he were no one. Marcus stood there, tray in hand, watching her shine, watching the life she'd built without him, watching her laugh with her fiancé, surrounded by people who loved and respected her. And he realized, finally, what he'd lost. Not her money, not her status, Her. Elena turned back to the crowd, raising her glass. To resilience, she said. The crowd echoed, to resilience! And Marcus, in the back, set down his tray and walked out alone into the night. Elena didn't watch him go. She was too busy living, because that's what winners do. They don't dwell on the past. They build the future. And she had a beautiful one ahead. If this story moved you, if you felt every twist and turn, hit that subscribe button. Drop a comment and tell me what you would have done in Elena's shoes. And smash that like button because we've got more stories like this coming your way. Stories of justice, resilience, and people who refuse to stay down. You won't want to miss what's next. Thank you for watching. Until the next story, stay strong, stay hopeful, stay inspired.